This week's episode of Still Untitled is brought to you by Rackspace. Did you know that Rackspace can help guide your migration to Amazon Web Services? Rackspace support for AWS offers tooling and automation for account management, security, and best practices. Learn more at rackspace.com/yourcloud. Now on with the show. Welcome to Still Untitled, the Adam Savage Project. I'm Norm.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Mayor McCheese.
Mayor McCheese.
My goodness. We're here.
It's actually Kishore, by the way.
It's Kishore for people listening on the audio podcast. We are here at Silicon Valley Comic-Con, the second one ever, and we're having a great time. It's been a fun weekend.
It has been a really fun weekend, and having been at the first one last year and at the second one this year, it's lovely to see the ways in which the con is bigger, to be sure, but the thing that I find most invigorating is that it's deeper. And what I mean is I see so much, I see more effort put into the costumes, I see more custom, I see more mashups, I see more kids and diversity. It's fantastic moving around the floor here.
I have to say, last year I participated on some science panels, and it was really wonderful. And coming back here, I've only been here an hour so far, but it feels richer. And in so many ways, this con, my favorite stat about this con, there are more scientists on panels at this con than celebrities.
Oh, that's fabulous. We just had Phil Plait, the bad astronomer, my friend. He was here this morning, and we were hanging out. You missed the party last night. It was fun.
I had something to do yesterday.
I think we're bearing the lead here because the other big thing that happened this past weekend, as you guys were listening to it, that Kishore, you were heavily involved in, was the Science March. And Adam, how was the Science March for you guys?
The Science March was absolutely incredible. It was, so that was how I began yesterday, heading over to Justin Herman Plaza in San Francisco and being the closing speaker of an hour-long roster of speakers in San Francisco's version. But there were over 500 separate science marches around the world. And Kishore, you were part and parcel of the arranging and organizing of most of them.
Pretty much all of them, yeah. We got up to 610 marches globally, and I was in charge of all the satellite marches, so everything but not DC, which, you know, I'm pretty happy with not being involved in the DC march. But it was amazing. I had stayed up pretty much consecutively when the first march started in New Zealand through to the San Francisco one, so I could just see what was coming in. And I was speechless in a lot of ways. It was just beyond words seeing thousands, if not millions of people worldwide march for something, march for truth, march for evidence, march for something bigger. What was your experience being out in front of that crowd yesterday in San Francisco, which stretched 10 blocks by the time it was done, by the time the march got going?
It was beautiful. I've done a lot of public speaking, but I have not spoken at many rallies, and it is a very different type of interaction with the crowd. It is much more immediate. We are all there together, and looking out over the plaza where you literally couldn't see spots of the street. You were just looking at a sea of people. The energy was so high. I was wondering what the Science March's version of the Pussy Hat was going to be. And it turned out to be puns and clever signs.
Yeah. Well, there were the resistor hats where they literally made knit hats with resistor diagrams on them, which were pretty funny.
Yes, but what I mean is also what is the thing that the papers are going to keep on printing, right? The newspapers, papers of records, they loved just writing the words "pussy hat." It was clear. And at the Science March, all of these amazing signs, including, you know, you and I finished the rally at Justin Herman Plaza with "What do we want?" Evidence-based, what was it? Evidence-based policies. When do we want it? After peer review.
It was pretty phenomenal. I just want to share just two moments that really struck me that I just didn't expect. It was the middle of the night, and I got a video in from the leader of the Berlin March. And this video starts with the crowd dead silent, and there's 14,000 people in the Central Plaza in Berlin. And then they all start singing this song that ends up being this German protest song from 1841 about the fight for truth. And there's nothing as captivating as seeing people all sing together in the fight for truth. Yeah. It was mesmerizing. But I actually spent most of the march wandering through the march, talking to people like, why are you doing this? Like, what is this all about? Like, I have my own personal reasons, which were gloriously on stage yesterday. Actually, in a way, upstaged me yesterday because I brought my dad on stage.
Right.
That was really moving.
Yeah, my dad brought us to this country. He got admitted to a science program. It's the whole reason our family exists here in the U.S. And we really went up there to, just talk about how we need to keep science open. And he was waving this sign around that says "Science has no borders." My 80-year-old dad, who he's a little bit ill and he can't really walk that far anymore, but he's like as proud as it could be.
Waving the sign around doesn't do justice to what your dad was doing. Your dad was a signpost. His hands never left the position of being in the full upright, holding that sign. He was demonstrating his commitment to the idea with his entire body all day long. I found it really, really moving to watch your dad display that amount of enthusiasm.
It was kind of weird that he was more into it than me. It's because I had planned it. There was one down here too. Norm, did you get to check it out?
No, but we heard a lot of people at the convention center. We were running the stuff here. A lot of people in the audience actually here went and marched. And I'm interested because you walking through the march and after or throughout, what were the demographics like?
I initially thought there would be a bunch of scientists out there, right? They're frustrated. They're marching against certain cuts in funding and whatnot. I started meeting people that just didn't line up into that neat little narrative. I met a lot of teachers. I met a lot of artists. I met a lot of just people that just had everyday jobs. They just didn't fit neatly in that, but they felt like there was this erosion, and has been for 20 years, of intellectualism is going away. And that creeping sense that people are just coming up with their own way of coming to conclusions. And I think you had sort of a beautiful statement about that yesterday, Adam, like what the enemy of science was.
That was when you write something like this, you write 5 times as much as you need, and you pare it back. Even up to yesterday morning, I pulled 20% of my talk out. After talking extensively with my wife about it. And yeah, the enemy of science it's not an ideology, it's not a party, it's not a person, it's not a law, it's bias. And it's personal bias that we all suffer from. We can't escape it. All we can do is face it and witness it. It's institutional bias. I also noticed that the crowd, I had a line towards the end when I said we are agents of change. In fact, we are reagents. And I thought that would get a giant laugh. And the degree of laugh told me, oh, it's not like 50% scientists here. It's like 20%.
It also kind of told you that wasn't as funny as you thought it was.
I disagree entirely.
So what next?
I think that's a huge question. I got interviewed yesterday, and somebody asked me, "Are you hopeful that changes are going to happen?" And there's this whole week of action and groups forming about maintaining this level of activism. And I want to put that aside for a second. I'm hopeful not because of how many people came out to march, which actually after this podcast I have to go calculate how many people marched, so I have some work to do. But I'm hopeful because I met a lot of the organizers that put on the marches. I met people in Oklahoma City, in Paris when we went out to CERN.
That was so cool. We were in Paris, and you spent the little time we had in a layover, basically meeting with the organizers at a cafe.
Wow.
I went to far northern California, Crescent City, met some organizers up there. The sense is that there's people in each of these hyper-local communities that deeply, deeply care about not only science, but they care about the people that live in those communities. They want to lift them up. And as long as people like that exist, I'm intensely hopeful for the future of science.
But the other thing that I realized in writing my talk was that government is a science. That when people band together to choose the best practices and decide upon how to move forward, the best policies come from agreement based on the evidence. And it's easy for people to understand that bias is the enemy of science, but it is also the enemy of proper governance and everybody having equal opportunities. And so, I think we live in this age where being called a racist is this terrible insult. And so whenever anyone talks about bias or privilege, everyone's like, well, I'm not a racist, I'm not a sexist. And that's not the point. That's no longer the point. The point is that we actually have to understand it's in our institutions, and we have to understand it's built into many of the structures with which our society was founded upon, and that's where we have to go looking for it.
In those cases, I feel like those words become very loaded, and it comes an argument of semantics. Do you feel like the word science is getting loaded, and people are kind of pulling it toward their interpretation, or even though it shouldn't be?
I don't think so. I think there's still a purity to the idea that people understand that there is an endeavor. I think that the difficulty we have is not the erosion of the idea of science, but the erosion of that people think it's an elitist or intelligence-based career. And this is the thing I'm here to tell everybody. It's not a career for smart people. It's a career for... Look, here's the best advertisement I know for science. Every scientist I've ever met loves their freaking job. Whether they're, like measuring fruit fly genitalia, they love their job. They love collecting data.
I can introduce you to some suffering scientists, but...
And every science communicator I know, present company included, loves their job.
Yes.
Absolutely. I do want to call out one other thing that was just spectacular. We had a special guest speaker that just showed up the last minute with Baratunde Thurston.
Dude.
Producer of The Daily Show, from The Onion.
I love that guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
He was amazing.
He talked about it, his mom. He talked about how she was a government scientist. It was just beautiful. And then as I was walking up Market Street, I'm talking to people in the crowd, and he comes, grabs me, pulls me off to the side of the street, and he's like, "This guy organized this thing," and he's like, "He's a star. You should make scientists the star," on just the side of the street on Market Street. It was so beautiful. I'm forever impressed with his sense of where science can be in this land.
And
his talk was wonderful, really, and off the top of his head too, which frankly blows my mind.
Which makes me have more respect for comedians than ever before.
Well, I told him, I was like, we were talking backstage, and I was like, I was still working my talk this morning. How late do you engage with the writing process? And he was like, I'm still doing it right here.
But how have things been going down here?
Things have been going great. I mean, so much. That's the other thing. Like, there's so much going on in the Bay Area this weekend for all how powerful yesterday was. You're here today, Kishore, wearing a Mayor McCheese cosplay, and
vote McCheese.
Vote McCheese. People's right to cheese.
So we've been here, we're actually recording in our cosplay repair shop. We've partnered with the organizers of this convention, Silicon Valley Comic-Con, and it's the first time we're doing this, and we talked about it last week in the podcast. You've actually had this idea in your head for a long time, and we dipped our toes in it.
And it's not an original idea. The first time I saw this was at Dragon Con, probably 10 years ago now, somebody walking around with a repair kit on their body, helping people fix with safety pins and zip ties and glue and acrylic paint, fix whatever was broken in their costumes, because as an avid cosplayer, I'm here to tell you nothing ever goes as you planned.
And no one ever wants to make that long walk back to the hotel on a hot day.
And so, we've had a repair table set up here all day.
Absolutely, yes. And it's we've met a lot of great cosplayers that way. Adam, you actually took some time yesterday to man the table.
I spent about 45 minutes fixing a few costumes, and I was talking to your wife, Danica, who also found it just as invigorating as I did. She spent all day at the table helping people fix their costumes. She said she was using skills that she'd forgotten that she knew, which is awesome.
Where was this at 6 in the morning when I tore my sash? I had that like panic of this morning when I like tore my sash, and I was like, I have to make a whole new mayor sash, and I had forgotten that this whole thing existed. I'm going to spend all sorts of time over there now repairing this.
Yeah, and then we've also at this very table been doing some demos. We have Frank Ippolito and Bill Doran here. They've been making foam helmets, and actually right after this podcast, they'll be doing another painting demo. But the floor has been great.
The floor is amazing.
So it's Silicon Valley Comic-Con, and everyone here listening is obviously knows of it, but out there, it's a different convention in that it merges some parts of technology and also pop culture. And these things mesh really well. NASA has a great booth. SETI has a great booth here.
Buzz Aldrin was here. Right?
That's right.
Like, let's just talk about the fact that a man that was on the moon was here, and didn't they bring the augmented reality Buzz Aldrin, where you can have him like point and yell at you?
Yes.
Can you get him to punch you in the face?
Only if you question the moon conspiracy.
I could build a robot that punched you in the face. So if you decided to do that, it would give you a. I bet he'd like that.
Yeah. We'll get
just to automate the process.
Try to get that in touch. Adam, you did a couple incognitos.
I've done 2 incognitos. So I brought Totoro to display here.
Yes.
But yesterday there was another Totoro wandering around, being operated. It was built by and operated by a guy named Adam. And we found him, and we brought him back to the room, and Adam and I went out together as 2 Totoros.
Totorai? Totorusses?
Totorati?
Totorological. Look, I'm hoping for San Diego that there are even more Totoros because, like I said, I really do want an army. He said he heard me say that in the video about it, and he took that seriously. His build was inspired by the one that I showed in our one-day build. It's the most fun costume to wear out in public because people just lose their minds. They hug you.
It is the most huggable cosplay you have.
Totally, completely. My wife described walking around, and I've said this before, as an antidepressant. Well, just walking around near me as Totoro. But then this morning was the big costume. And that was taking my old Chewbacca costume with some upgraded parts, including the bandolier, which I did as a one-day build recently. And on the back of that was a complete vacuum metallized 3PO built. The parts were supplied to me by Gordon Tarpley, master 3PO cosplayer and builder. Jeremy Williams designed and built the Arduino-based sound system and animatronic system, and unfortunately, the neck of 3PO broke at the last minute, so his head was supposed to turn, and it did not turn. But again, nothing ever quite goes according to plan at a con, and that's just part of the deal. Yeah. And it was great. Like, people were losing their minds. I took a picture with the whole family of Leah's, yeah, that was awesome.
I think you're underselling the sense of scale. Okay. Like I was walking around as a cheeseburger, and like I stumbled like around a corner, and I'm like, oh, there's an 8-foot Chewbacca with a 3PO on its back, like towering over everything else in its sight, with the crossbow,
with the bowcaster. This is true, and I would be remiss if I didn't say that 3PO was also complaining the entire time. Yes. And again, the 3PO voice was also recorded by Gordon, who does a fantastic 3PO impression. I included a Star Trek reference where 3PO says about every 3 minutes, he says, "I'm a protocol droid, not a backpack."
He McCoys it. Yeah. And Gordon's fantastic as a 3PO performer himself. We actually did an interview and a video with him. Once he puts on that costume, which is not easy, it transforms.
You've worn a lot of hot costumes.
Yes.
How did this stack up?
The Chewie isn't bad because all the hair of the fursuit is latch hooked onto netting. So when I'm walking, I feel a cool breeze across my whole body. I'm also wearing Under Armour, the cool garments, the ones that wick heat away from your body. And actually, a couple years ago at one of my tours, the CEO of Under Armour came backstage, and we were talking about the micro dynamics of how that fabric is built, that it wicks heat away. It's really cool. So that costume isn't that bad. The mask itself is totally hot as balls. And yeah, I pulled it off. I believe that even though it was like I wasn't in danger of getting heat stroke, I still lost 2 or 3 pounds in water weight in that 45 minutes.
Yeah, the great anticipation that we have is when you take off the mask at the end. How sweaty is Adam, and how soon can we get him a water? Yeah, it's exhausting. So
you know that I love putting together the kits, and we covered the dressing. We have a one-day build about the 3PO, and one of the things I realized I forgot was a towel. A towel has to be a key part of every cosplaying kit.
How so?
Well, just so that I can towel off at the end of the run. I need to be able to sit down and just sort of cool down again.
I mean, there are different priorities for different cosplayers. Just even between the 2 Totoros, you and the other Adam, your rig, which we'll have in the video, is completely upgraded. You had 2 iPhones inside.
Yes.
One for modulating your voice, and one is a camera for the GoPro to look out. Another GoPro looking in.
Well, and we also have footage from those GoPros, and we'll cover. I think the walk will be a separate video on Tested. So I can only see through the top of Totoro through a GoPro Hero 5, which is conveniently black, so you can't see it underneath Totoro's leaf hat. And we have that coverage, but then also I have an old GoPro on the inside photographing me, and I hope that footage turns out great.
It's like Iron Man, like when Tony Stark has his
Exactly.
Robert Downey Jr.'s face, except you're much sweatier and smiling the entire time.
Wait, you just glossed. Why do you need iPhones to power a Totoro?
So one iPhone is wirelessly looking at
Through the
GoPro that's on my head, so that's how I see out.
And illuminating his face.
And illuminating my face. But then I also wanted Totoro to have a voice. So Jeremy Williams found me an app called Robo Voice, which does a pitch shift. And he did the research and found me the correct splitter that works with the iPhone to split off out of the iPhone's jack both a microphone and a headphone jack that goes to a UE Boom speaker underneath Totoro. So I can make sounds.
Roar.
I can roar. It's wonderful. And I'm using an old iPhone. I'm profligate in my technology purchasing, so I have a few old iPhones, and I used a second one just for the pitch modulation.
You know, I deeply want you to walk into an Apple store and be like, I got Apple Care on my Totoro. Can you help me out here?
How do I keep it from shutting down every 2 minutes? Where's that setting again?
And then from the most elaborate cosplay to something relatively simple but super effective, Simone was here on Friday with us, and she did her first cosplay walk with a helmet she made out of an old Macintosh SE.
It was great. And she was lit. And on the inside, she had lines of LED lights. She agreed with me that whenever you light like that, you just look fantastic.
Wait, she hollowed out the Macintosh.
Yeah.
And put it on her head.
Yes. Yes.
This is the most Simone thing ever. But
she asked me. She emailed me and said, "Do you think that Woz will mind that I took apart a Mac to do this?"
No
and I was
way.
Like, not at all. He's gonna love it.
Wait.
And then the new nerds out there will say, "Woz did not actually work on the Macintosh."
Nerds out there or nerds sitting right next to me?
Jeremy pointed that out to me this morning as I have a Mac shirt.
Did she just sit there with her face in there, or did she?
She had face paint.
What'd she paint on her face?
The Finder logo. Yeah.
That's great.
Some great photos of that.
That's amazing.
And a keyboard hanging underneath.
I haven't spoken to her since she did that. How did she find her first experience of doing a cosplay walk?
Great. It wasn't intentionally an incognito, but it ended up being so because the computer blocks the sides of her face. And so people can't recognize her from the peripheral, and even looking straight on because she's wearing makeup. There are many occasions, she's not hiding, occasions where people walked up, took a photo, and then realized who she was and got really excited, and that was very pleasant.
Listen, one thing I want to do, and I would feel remiss if I didn't say this, we do a lot at the cons. We cover a ton of different things. We get dozens of videos out of every con we go to, and I get to fulfill my childhood fantasy of putting on costumes of great elaboration and wear them on the floor, usually for between 30 minutes and 60 minutes, and I come back sweaty and exhausted and exhilarated. But this con is full of people who wake up at 7 a.m. in their hotel, maybe blocks from the convention because hotel rooms are hard to find in towns where a con is happening. And they put on a hot costume and they wear it all day long. That is a level of dedication and commitment to the act that I want to tip my hat to, because that's real. All I'm doing is I'm what do you call it? I'm a little bit of a cosplay tourist because I get to do it under these kind of idealized conditions, and I understand the dedication these cosplayers show and the beautiful handmade costumes. We took tons of pictures with people yesterday.
We met, there was a whole masquerade, the costume contest, and afterwards we invited the participants to come back here and get some photos so we can check out their costumes, honestly. And there's some really beautiful, like some of the most simpler designs, ideas.
They're charming when they're simple sometimes.
Oh no, they're the best. The little girl in the pink robot with the guns. I saw her as we were driving up yesterday. Plus, I saw at least 3 costumes yesterday that I had been following the build logs on various forums.
Yeah, you said, where have I seen you before? And then you're like, oh wait, I remember this specific thread.
Right, it was
this
the Mandalorian
photo.
Merc who had the white armor with rust, and I was like, oh right. Your rust is using cinnamon, and he was like, yes.
Yeah. I have to say, as somebody that I didn't cosplay for a long time, and then before I was at Testa, I would watch the incognito videos. I'm like, I can do this. But I don't have like very much skill. So like my Mayor McCheese is held together with like pins, and like it's just sort of matched together. but I love it. That's the point. It's like that love, and then I inhabit that character, so I'm like walking around saying political slogans as a mayor. It's ridiculous, but I love it, and I think it's charming to everyone around you.
Well, so when I was walking as as Chewie just a few minutes ago and saw you, I didn't realize it was you at first.
Well, there's a giant cheeseburger on my head. It's hard to recognize
my
me.
thought was, I love that. I can tell that was made by the person who is wearing it. It might not be expertly made, but it is made with love and gumption, right? And that's, again, some of the simplest costumes where I complimented a guy on his suit yesterday, and he said, actually, I think it looks like crap. And I said, right, but you did it, and you're wearing it, and that's something that I find beautiful. It doesn't have to be an amazing costume in order to wear it. It's just about the experience.
Now, Adam, I know you have a big panel later today, and you're doing an autograph session. I hope you get a chance, though, to walk the floor a little bit. There's some really cool stuff. There's actually a screen-used auction happening next door where they have some amazing props from RoboCop, Back to the Future 2, Superman.
There is also a booth here of some incredible cars, Blade Runner spinners, and some unbelievable stuff, some Terminators out there on the floor. Again, NASA's got a booth. I took a bunch of pictures in front of the meatball logo as Chewbacca.
The NASA booth is the best. They have the Sophia mission, which I'll just go on forever about it. The K2SO, I love.
K2SO is amazing. The paper one?
Yeah, I just started seeing K2SOs recently going to cons. It is so phenomenal because it just is the least humanoid shape possible with how it like cuts in at the thorax. So seeing those people out there together in that way.
Totally. And the one that we covered recently on Tested that you saw at Frank's prop party, at the RPF prop party at Frank's shop, I've been following that build, and it is a build I would love to do at some point because K2SO is such a great character. And to do it in that Bunraku style, is that the way to describe it?
I'm not sure, but I think so, yeah, where every one of your motions, your hands and your legs,
it's the same way
puppeted out.
3PO was done for the prequel, for episode 1.
And it's how a lot of people do General Grievous, and actually we saw an Ed 209 here at this show done the same way as well.
I have followed that build of the Ed 209, and I stopped and took some pictures of them as Chewie, and that is a gorgeous build. I love that thing. How light it is, and it's full size and made of effectively cardboard and hardware store materials.
Yeah. It's a ton of fun.
So this has been a weekend of basically total inspiration on every kind of front, from civic engagement to public pride in evidence-based policies to cosplay to the con full of scientists.
What a wonderful world that I can go from, leading a global march to wearing a cheeseburger on my head.
Kishore, it might be my favorite quality about you, and I really can't believe I think we should finish on this. I really can't believe how much dedication and how much energy you put into this, and yet you are still easygoing, sweet, fun to talk to, Kishore. You're not like, I'm totally overwhelmed. I don't know how you stay from being completely overwhelmed, but you do.
You know my secret?
Yeah.
I like people. People lift me up. Like hearing stories.
It's Diet Coke. Come on. That's your secret.
I like people and Diet Coke.
They're not sponsoring me yet.
Well, thank you guys out there for listening, and thank you everyone here joining us.
Yes, we're doing this in front of a live audience here. So you give a shout, everybody. Hello. Awesome.
And we'll hope to see you guys at future conventions where we'll hope to set something up like this, run a booth or a room. It doesn't matter what size, even if it's a mobile cart.
Absolutely.
We'll be absolutely doing that. We have a lot of cool stuff on Tested this week. People are listening to this on Tuesday. Wednesday is 426, which is Alien Day. And
no, Norm. No, we're not letting this be a thing.
It's a thing for Fox, and all I'll tease is that we may have some interesting stuff related to that on the site. Yeah,
yes.
So you'll have to check out on the site.
Could be interesting.
And so thank you out there again, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Once again, I want to thank the sponsor of this week's episode of Still Untitled, and that is Rackspace. Rackspace support for Amazon Web Services offers tooling and automation for account management, security, and best practices. Control your costs and relax knowing Rackspace will monitor your AWS 24/7. Learn more at rackspace.com/yourcloud.
Thanks again for listening to Still Untitled. If you have 1 extra minute, I'd love for you to help us. Do us a big favor and go to the website untitledsurvey.com to take a very short anonymous survey about today's episode. It would be a big help to keep this show running, and we'd all appreciate it. Again, that's untitledsurvey.com for a quick survey to help this show. We'll see you next week.